Hey guys, LevelCap here. Today is Monday, which means it's time for an episode of Loadout, the series where you guys, the viewers, get to pick a gun and customization for me to use. The way you do this is you leave a comment down below, letting me know what setup you'd like me to run with, and I will pick one of the top rated comments for the next episode. Today's top comment comes from Pat Max. He says, Burstfire Rampage style KH2002 Cobra sight grip optional. Heavy barrel, 93R defib, medkit, squad cover. You will have to time your reloads with the KH2002 due to the long reload time, but besides that, this weapon is amazing. Now, I don't know if I personally would use the word amazing to describe the KH2002. It is a cool looking gun. It's interesting for a burstfire rifle, but I don't know if it can really compete with some of the top end guns out there. There's a common thing that happens to players, myself included, is that you'll join a game, you'll try out a weird gun that maybe you haven't tried before, you just haven't used in a long time, and you'll just have an amazing round. Happens to me all the time. It doesn't necessarily mean that the gun that you are using is amazing. A lot of people attribute their success to the weapon, and sometimes it just has to do with your opponents not being particularly great, or you're just really on the spot, really making the best use out of your gun, but you might have done just as well, if not better, with a more powerful assault rifle or a more powerful weapon. The true test of a great gun is to go up against really good opponents using their favorite guns and seeing how it stacks up. In that situation, the KH2002 seems to fall a bit short. Now, I've talked about burstfire weapons before and some of my issues with them, and they definitely do have benefits, but because of the damage model in Battlefield, there are some huge drawbacks to burstfire. The obvious one is simply the sheer output of ammunition at your opponents. Bursting the weapon means that you're going to have to take a small break in between each burst, which overall is going to lower your rate of fire, not to mention the additional clicking required to fire your weapon often can throw off your aim depending on how your fire mechanism is set up. Sometimes if you're playing on console, burst firing isn't as big a deal. Sometimes people on PC bind their fire key to something on the keyboard so that when you click your so that you're not clicking your left mouse button to fire. This way it's not screwing with your aim at all. But regardless of that, the KH2002 only has a rate of fire of 800 rounds per minute, on par with the M16, slightly faster than the, say, M416. But the problem with this is that you're not going to be shooting 800 rounds per minute. In order to get full 800 round per minute for a 30 round magazine, you're going to have to time your burst firing perfectly, which is pretty much impossible to do. I've seen some people get some very high rates of fire with burst fire weapons, but it's usually in a test scenario where they're just focusing on firing at the perfectly timed intervals, and they're not in the middle of a crazy combat situation. To try and get your maximum rate of fire out in a crazy combat situation is very hard to do, especially while trying to maintain aim and all the other things that you have to focus on when in the heat of battle. A lot of the Burstfire mechanic problems stem from the fact that DICE is really working with two sort of conflicting models. One, they're trying to replicate guns from real life and have them perform the way that they do in real life. A lot of modern military weapons have burst fire. Some of them don't even have full auto. The M16A4 doesn't have a full auto version because burst fire conserves ammo, allows the soldiers to be accurate and still put a few bullets down range rather than going full auto and wasting their whole magazine. And in real life, one bullet can deal with your opponent. You don't have to worry about putting 4 or 5 rounds into them. Now you take those same mechanics, put them in Battlefield 3, give the KH2002 a 3-round burst fire mode. Each round does 25 damage. Somebody has 100 health. Well, if you hit them with all 3 bullets in the chest, then they're still alive. Now if you get lucky and hit 2 in the chest, 1 in the head, you can potentially down them with 1 burst. However, it's very, very uncommon. DICE has tried to make all the NATO round guns that use the standard NATO round ammunition have the exact same damage output, so they can't really modify the damage output of this gun without breaking their sort of damage model. I mean, they could go ahead and decide to change the damage output of the weapon to try and balance things better. But it's just an issue with Burstfire Mechanics not really being appropriate for a game of this nature. When you have to put 4 rounds or 5 rounds in a guy to take them down, Burstfire just doesn't really become economical unless you up the damage to the point where you can deal with them in 1 burst or easily deal with them in 2 bursts. Alright, so I think I've spent enough time covering the fatal flaw of Burstfire weapons in Battlefield 3. Let's talk a little bit about what the KH2002 does right. It does have a nice rate of fire for its Burstfire at 800 rounds per minute. Not incredibly fast, but fast enough. And it also has an incredibly fast bullet velocity of 650 meters per second. This is almost tied with the AUG for being one of the fastest firing bullet velocity-wise guns in the game. This is going to make it great for hitting targets at long range and especially moving targets at long range. You're not going to really have to lead very much. Just aim directly at the guy, shoot, your bullets should hit. It also has a pretty good aiming down sight accuracy of 0.2, making it on the very low side of assault rifles in terms of minimum spread. The M16A4 has a better accuracy, which I find is funny. They did up the M16A4's base accuracy to compensate for the fact that it's a burstfire weapon, but the KH2002 didn't really get an aiming down sight accuracy bonus. I'm not really sure why. I don't think the KH2002 is in any danger of being an overpowered weapon. Because it's a bullpup weapon and the magazine loads at the rear, this reduces its recoil and makes it a much better weapon for close quarter combat. DICE of course rewards you in the sense they give it better hip fire. So if somebody surprises you in CQC, you don't have to aim down sight. You can shoot from the hip and it should be relatively accurate. It has a hip fire accuracy of 2.0. Most assault rifles have a 2.5 hip fire accuracy. And of course the trade-off with the bullpup design is that you have a longer reload time for your guns. It's a little more awkward getting to the back of the gun to get the magazine out and pop a new magazine in. And so they give you a 2.9 fast reload time for this gun. Now on the plus side, if you're reloading your mags before you've run out of bullets, then you're going to have a potential of 31 rounds available to you. 1 in the chamber, 30 in the magazine. Because this gun shoots in 3-round bursts, you often end up having 1 bullet left over even if you go through 30 rounds, so you can still hit that fast reload time. It's just unfortunate that the fast reload time is 2.9 seconds. Compare that to, say, the Burstfire M16A4. That thing reloads in 1.8 seconds, over a second faster. So it makes the KH2002 really difficult to use in close quarters with that reload time. So you just want to keep your distance as far away as possible. Even though this gun is good at hip firing, you really don't want to use that unless you absolutely have to. Now there is one thing about the KH2002 which should really make it an attractive weapon for new players. And when I say new players, I mean players who are new to first-person shooters, who do not know how to control recoil, and that is that the vertical recoil is going to be incredibly low. In fact, this gun has the lowest vertical recoil out of any other assault rifle. It does have high side-to-side recoil, so you're going to want to use a foregrip on here, but in terms of just not controlling recoil, this gun will return to its normal firing position faster than any other assault rifle out there. So it's going to be a really easy gun to use for somebody with no recoil compensation skills. Anyway, that's it for this episode of Loadout. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember to leave your comments down below, letting me know what kind of gun and accessories to run with for the next week's episode of Loadout, and I'll see you guys next time. This is LevelCap, signing off.